Vanessa was born in a very small town that was more like a large village. It was later renamed to a town. There was still a hospital, maternity wards, school, kindergarten, and a few shops. However, due to people moving away, gradually even those closed down. Her parents were simple workers and had a fairly large farm, which allowed them to afford trips to the sea and dress well, as dreaming big wasn't common in the small town. There were many children there, but most of them were boys, so Vanessa's birth became a real event. "There will be few friends for her," said the midwife. "This year we only had 4 girls born. Vanessa is the 5th. "It's okay," her mom replied. "They'll value friendship more." "You have a beautiful Vanessa," said Grandma Olivia, who had an amazing intuition about people. "She won't go unnoticed, and she'll fend off all the boys from the girls. If, of course, she stays here to live. After all, many of us move to bigger cities." Vanessa grew up obedient but very active and energetic. She loved playing with animals, feeding them, and simply swinging in the yard. She enjoyed running and playing with the boys. She was content with what was happening around her, and she liked children's games. Where else but here could she appreciate all the delights of walking through puddles, fresh strawberries just picked from the field, and homemade ice cream made from natural cream? Where else would you find such delicacies? Maybe not in their village. Her mother once received an ice cream maker as a gift, and with it they could make unique ice cream by adding fresh berries and various fruits. Vanessa loved sweets very much. She loved to play with cats and dogs, and thought that her future life should be connected with animals. Although she also understood that her plans changed very quickly. One day her mom took her to the big city. The hustle, the crowds, and the bustle of the metropolis amazed the girl. She enjoyed strolling in the squares, parks, visiting the zoo, and other places in the city. There her mom bought her ice cream, a beautiful red dress with white polka dots and transparent ribbons. The little girl was happy with the purchased balloon. She especially liked the red one, bright, cute. She proudly walked with it through the central streets of the city, admiring what was happening around her. She loved to play, walk, and jump around, and she even made a wish that she would definitely come back to the city, but later. Her village was fun, but only while Vanessa was a child. As she grew older, she began to feel bored. And when Vanessa turned 15, she decided to go to the big city herself, just to change the scenery. She enjoyed admiring the streets and the atmosphere for hours. Unexpectedly, an incredibly handsome guy passed by her. His big blue eyes seemed to absorb all the beauty of the sky. The guy was wearing a denim jacket. His light hair almost seemed angelic. Vanessa had definitely never seen such handsome guys in her village. Could you possibly fall in love with a completely stranger, let alone in a foreign city? But what if she meets him again? Vanessa decided to follow the guy to understand where she could meet him again. He walked down the street, and it was a September day. The young man was probably a schoolboy or a first or second year college student, no more. Vanessa followed him. Going into the canteen, he bought several sausages and dough, put them in bags, and headed for a large gray building. It was a railway institute. Vanessa realized that the guy was studying there. In her eyes, there was already a desire to meet him again, but she didn't know how. When the young man disappeared behind the door, Vanessa remembered the question she hadn't had time to ask. She wanted to know where there was good coffee and which institute was the best to enter after school. She thought he seemed quite sociable and was unlikely to be rude in response. So Vanessa decided that she would definitely come back to the city soon and meet the guy. But for now, while he was sitting through lectures, she decided that his portrait would always be nearby. He looked very much like the lead singer of a popular band. Buying posters from a nearby kiosk, the girl decided that her favorite would always be with her, even if only in photographs. However, it was long past time to return home. Vanessa boarded the train and rejoiced that she had fallen in love for the first time in her life. The poster immediately adorned her bed. However, her parents didn't attach much importance to it. In her youth, her mom herself collected tapes and records of her favorite celebrity, and pictures of the star were even in the bathroom. Meanwhile, Jimmy was in love with Vanessa. He was a simple country boy who didn't want to move to the city, and was content to stay with his family. At 16, he was a real hard worker. He could fix fences, milk cows, and cook dinner. He was considered the good catch for any country girl. However, no one appealed to him except Vanessa. His crush was truly beautiful. Big brown eyes, long lashes, and golden hair were rare here. Usually, the girls here were either brunettes with straight hair or girls with blonde hair and very light eyes, almost colorless. Vanessa was indeed beautiful and liked by many. But since the blue-eyed city stranger appeared in her life, the efforts of all the guys became in vain. Vanessa dreamed of finishing school as soon as possible and moving to the big city. She chose the Railway Institute where she could meet this handsome guy. She loved him very much and dreamed that he would bring her true happiness and the brightest, happiest emotions. However, it wouldn't hurt to get to know him. So Vanessa, choosing a weekday, decided to go to the city again, to the institute where she met the guy. She arrived in the city just as it was known, and the break began. Sitting on a bench near the institute, Vanessa prepared all the important questions, including where to find the most delicious milkshakes in the city and where to take a walk during the break. She was nervous. The students had already headed to the cafeteria to stock up on rolls and sandwiches. Apparently, they didn't have a buffet, or you had to take a seat to just have a snack with your favorite dishes. Vanessa would recognize her idol in the crowd no matter what he wore. Finally, the guy appeared. The girl was flustered and unexpectedly asked him as he passed by where in the city the most delicious milkshakes were. The guy wasn't surprised by her question and named the place. "Well, I don't know the city. Do you want to take a walk there together? I can show you other places where you can have a pleasant walk and relax. By the way, my name is Jimmy. And yours?" "Vanessa." "Great. We can spend leisure time together and have a great chat." Jimmy turned out to be a city dweller. He knew practically every place in the city where you could take a walk, eat ice cream, or just spend time culturally. He asked Vanessa quite a few questions, but the girl wasn't ready for most of them. Jimmy didn't try to blame her for not knowing anything and patiently suggested what books to read and what to do in her free time. Based on the knowledge, Vanessa understood that she was unlikely to be admitted to the Railway Institute. After all, her native school didn't provide the education necessary for admission. Then Jimmy told her where she could enroll without much preparation and then gain experience and choose another institution. The music school. Pop singing attracted many students who studied well and had the opportunity to earn money by performing in city venues. Moreover, they were nominated for competitions and showcases where you could find your happiness and a very successful groom. I'm not saying that everyone who can't make it here goes there, but maybe you'll like it more. Many girls want to become singers and you're talking about the railroad. The guy smiled. "I don't even know. I can think about it." Vanessa rolled her eyes. And although Vanessa had never sung anywhere, she decided that this school would be a good starting point for her future. By studying there, you could eventually read books, broaden your knowledge, and choose what you liked best. When she told her parents about it, they were surprised, but didn't stand in her daughter's way. Maybe in the city, she could find her happiness, or maybe realizing that everything wasn't so simple, she would return to the village. The parents didn't keep it a secret that Vanessa dreamed of becoming a singer, and by the next day, everyone knew. They were very proud of her. Her classmates laughed, thinking that the girl had no talent, and Jimmy became sad. He was often seen with a glass in his hand. Even Mary, who had a crush on him, turned away from him. She considered Jimmy a good guy, fairly kind and interesting. However, she didn't like Vanessa. Mary knew that Jimmy was ready to do anything for her, so she hated her rival and tried to harm her however she could. However, no matter how hard Mary tried, Jimmy remained indifferent to her. Upon learning that Vanessa was planning to study to become a singer, she said the following to Jimmy. "You're wasting your time chasing after her. You know Vanessa won't stay in the village and wants to pursue a career as a singer. And there will be plenty of guys chasing after her. Almost everyone will fall in love with her. And what will you be left with? Jealousy? She won't become any singer," Jimmy replied. "To make it big on the stage, you need a lot of money and influential relatives. Well, you'd better sigh over normal girls, especially since you're not planning to leave here. Look at me. You're making me suffer. We could have been happy together. I would have given you children. I would have cooked delicious pancakes every day. Your Vanessa will never learn to make them, Mary said. I can eat pancakes at home, and I never liked you anyway, so don't attach yourself to me, Jimmy replied, looking after Vanessa. Well, suit yourself, the girl replied. Will you suffer? That's none of your business anymore. Mary left offended and didn't speak to him anymore. She liked Noah, but he was completely out of her league. But realizing that there was no point in waiting for Jimmy's feelings anymore, she decided to give him a try. Meanwhile, Vanessa started going to the city more often. She had already auditioned and even had lessons with a teacher who noted her good vocal abilities. Of course, she wasn't strong in music theory. However, she grasped the material very easily. Soon she was accepted into the first year and moved into the dormitory. She easily got along with her roommates and spent her free time with Jimmy. He turned out to be a very sociable and communicative guy who could tell a lot of interesting things, both about his city and about himself personally. Jimmy lost his father early and decided to become just like him, a railway worker. He studied well, liked a healthy lifestyle, and of course, he loved to swim and even played in the volleyball team. Vanessa liked Jimmy. The more he talked about himself, the more he won her heart. However, for some reason, their relationship didn't progress further, although Vanessa did everything to make them truly close. How many girlfriends have you had? Vanessa asked. Practically none, even though many liked me, Jimmy replied. Then, after a pause, he continued, well, you see, you can't get rid of clingy girls. They can imagine you are in love with them just because you greet them, and then they start almost fighting each other over you. I don't need such relationships at all. Do you love me? Vanessa asked, blushing. I think it's too early for us to talk about love yet. We need to finish our studies, get a job, and stand firmly on our own feet. Then it will become clear whether there is love or not. A young girl's life changes a lot, and quickly at that. She may be friends with a certain girl for a year, not to mention boys, and then suddenly change her preferences. So everything in life is relative, and everything changes, sometimes in completely unpredictable ways. So for now, we'd better just enjoy our relationship rather than make plans for the future. Besides, you're studying in the entertainment department, and many guys already notice you. And then you might choose a different career, so we should think about it. But I like what I'm doing, and I won't change anything. Well, you used to say something else before. There's no constancy in you. Vanessa was silent. She expected Jimmy to say that he loved her and that she was the only girl in his life. Vanessa believed that true friends don't exchange each other and that friendship can continue, just like love, from infancy to old age. Many people in her village lived like that, so she herself couldn't imagine changing her affections, dating one boy and then another, because love, it arises only once in life. It was for this reason that Vanessa felt a chill in her relationship with Jimmy, although he didn't notice it. The guy continued to communicate as usual, but the relationship itself seemed completely different to Vanessa than she had expected. But the next day she realized how wrong she was. After all, they had only been dating for a few months, so what kind of love could it be? Especially since they were both still studying, not standing on their own feet, and youth itself makes you change your views on many things. For example, Vanessa used to consider entertainment, singing completely uninteresting for herself, but now she enjoys learning and doing it. Teachers started praising her and even sending her to various shows and competitions, and this was only in the first year. This indicates that she has found her place in life, and therefore nothing needs to be changed. And Jimmy? It will be seen later how the relationship will develop. They are still too young to understand what love is. And although Vanessa imagined relationships like Romeo and Juliet's, who married despite everyone's opposition, Vanessa's relationship with Jimmy was going well. They were happy, but didn't rush things. There was still plenty of room for romance and dates. However, as they approached the final year of their studies, their relationship began to cool off slightly. Sometimes Vanessa felt like Jimmy wasn't really dating her, just pretending. They weren't friends, they were a couple. But Vanessa stubbornly tried to convince herself otherwise. She wanted everything to be like everyone else. And since these were her first relationships, there was still much she didn't understand. In the year of graduation, Vanessa, as usual, was involved in music. She enjoyed singing, playing, and experiencing positive impressions and emotions when an elegant and interesting man entered the room. Usually, Vanessa didn't pay much attention to other men because she had Jimmy, and she didn't even consider the possibility of liking someone else, especially from the category of older people. However, she really liked this handsome man. He was serious, slim, with big blue eyes, almost like Jimmy's, only he looked more solid and handsome, more serious than other people. He's a producer, Nicole, who studied with Vanessa, replied. Every year he auditions girls for new projects. Wow, probably getting to know him better you can become a real star. I think so, Nicole sighed, perfectly understanding that in terms of beauty, she was losing to Vanessa. Listen, we need to meet him. And how are we going to do that? Her friend asked, surprised. Well, he'll obviously get hungry and go somewhere to eat, and we'll follow him. Vanessa smiled. We can't miss this chance. And Timothy did indeed go to a restaurant. The girls followed him and also went to sit in that establishment. But as soon as Vanessa entered the restaurant, she turned pale. Sitting at one of the tables was her Jimmy, but not alone. He was with a girl with long black hair down to her waist. First, they were eating ice cream, then dancing together and genuinely happy. Vanessa couldn't believe her eyes, but she didn't start a scene. Then Timothy noticed them and invited them to his table. He smiled at Vanessa, and she tried not to look in Jimmy's direction. Then Timothy ordered the most delicious pizza and a very tasty lemonade, which they both liked. They danced together all evening and were truly happy. Vanessa understood why Jimmy was hesitating with his proposal. She didn't try to clarify the relationship. He came to her, but Vanessa pretended as if she didn't know him at all and constantly left. By the end of the evening, Timothy confessed that he hadn't met anyone prettier than Vanessa. Vanessa listened to him and understood that Jimmy had taught her a lot. For example, she became more mature with him, and now, listening to this man, Vanessa understood what he wanted. After the restaurant, Vanessa went with him to the hotel, leaving her friend behind. She understood that by spending the night with him, she could get what she wanted, a career. But she assessed her chances adequately, and for her, it was a real celebration that just before leaving this city, he proposed that she go with him. Vanessa, I will make you a dizzying career. You won't regret it. So soon? But we hardly know each other. It doesn't matter. I feel like you're the one I need, Timothy said. Well, I don't know. We can try. I've already finished my studies. So Vanessa moved to the capital. She believed Timothy that a dizzying career awaited her and was looking forward to it. Vanessa wasn't even embarrassed that the man was almost 20 years older than her. And as soon as he made her an offer, she immediately agreed. There was a lavish wedding attended by many journalists. Vanessa couldn't believe it herself. It's incredible how lucky she was in life. She married a famous producer. Then he began to promote Vanessa and tried to make her a star. However, as it turned out, in the big city, not everything was so simple. If in her hometown she was considered talented, here there were talented people at every step. Vanessa even released a few songs, but somehow they didn't catch on with the listeners. The man didn't understand what was wrong with her. And one day, Timothy said that he had spent a lot of money on her promotion, but nothing had paid off. Vanessa, you need to understand, it's not your thing to shine on stage. You'd better stay at home, meet me from work and cook dinner. Timothy, but you promised that I would become famous. Vanessa looked at him attentively, waiting for a logical answer. You are already famous, you are my wife, and let others parade in swimsuits on stage. He smiled. So gradually, dreams of a career took a back seat. Vanessa spent whole days at home, cooking dinner and waiting for her husband, and soon she got tired of this life. And she began to express to Timothy again that he didn't call her here for this, for her to live in the kitchen. Why are you starting? I think it's time for us to have a baby, he said. Vanessa's face changed sharply. This was indeed what she had been thinking about lately, but she was afraid to ask her husband about it. afraid to offend him because he was not young anymore. Vanessa was simply not very familiar with show business yet, and having children at such an age was considered quite normal. Honestly, the girl had never lived so well. She could afford absolutely everything. Her husband gave her large pocket money. Vanessa helped her parents, and she didn't even remember Jimmy anymore. She wasn't even interested in what he was doing now. He had hurt her too much. Timothy helped Vanessa open her own beauty salon, and he did it only so that Vanessa would have less time to think about her solo career. He didn't want to invest in it anymore, since he stopped seeing talent in her. Now Vanessa was constantly sitting in her beauty salon. She was thinking about what else could be added to make the salon bring in as much money as possible. And then Vanessa got pregnant. This was a huge happiness not only for her, but also for her husband. She ran out of the hospital and didn't even know how to start a conversation about the fact that they would soon become parents. Everything just happened on its own. Timothy was at home at the time, and as soon as Vanessa entered the mansion, she told him everything. "Vanessa, I'm so happy. You can't even imagine." Her husband smiled. "And I'm so happy too. We will have a baby, our life will change, and I will try to be the best mom in the world. I'm sure you will succeed." Sometimes Vanessa felt like all the joy that came from Timothy was fake, and she even asked him several times if he was really happy about her pregnancy. "Vanessa, why do you ask such questions?" "Of course, I'm happy." During the 9 months of pregnancy, Vanessa walked with a happy face. She was glad and prepared to become a mother. The girl didn't care who would be born to her. She just wanted to see her baby as soon as possible. But pregnancy had a negative impact on the couple's relationship. Vanessa was constantly at home. She spent whole days walking around the rooms and stroking her stomach, often even talking to it. She stopped paying attention to her husband, and he quickly found a replacement for her. Vanessa, of course, didn't know about it, but one day, walking in the park, she noticed her husband in the company of a beautiful and young girl. They were happy, hugging and kissing. The girl couldn't believe her eyes. The man she loved more than life was cheating on her now. Earlier, she would have laughed if someone had told her about it, because she was sure that Timothy really loved her. It turns out he was just skillfully pretending. That evening, Vanessa told Timothy everything she thought about him, and they had a big fight. And the next day, waking up early in the morning, she started having contractions and went to the maternity hospital. She gave birth to a daughter, and she was very happy. The birth of her daughter changed Vanessa a lot. Now she already understood that it was pointless to be jealous of Timothy. He clearly had been successful with women before. After all, he was a producer. Or maybe Vanessa just didn't care about him anymore. And all her attention was now focused on Flora. But as they say, trouble never comes alone. And soon Vanessa found out that her husband was having an affair with some young singer. She wanted to keep herself in check, but unable to stand it, she started to quarrel again. "When will this end? You told me you loved me. Why are you cheating? Do you like it when I scold you, and when your daughter looks at you with sad eyes?" "Listen, Vanessa, I'm terribly tired of you, and I'm asking you, don't shout." "How can I not shout? Would you be pleased if I cheated on you? If you cheated on me even once, you'd quickly go back to where I brought you from." He smirked. "Is this how you decided to talk to me? Fine." Vanessa began to understand that Timothy had completely cooled off towards her, and they were only living together because of the child. Her husband didn't want to talk to her at all. He liked the life he lived before getting married. And then one day, in the midst of a scandal, Timothy told Vanessa that he wanted a divorce. "And remember, Flora will stay with me. You understand that without housing and a job, you'll never be trusted with the child. Why are you saying such things? She's my daughter, and you simply won't be able to handle her. I'll hire a nanny. Fortunately, I have the money, and if you try to say something to me again, you'll be out on the street in a heartbeat." After that conversation, Vanessa began to look at her life completely differently. She realized that Timothy wasn't joking, and if he really wanted to get rid of her, he would do it in a matter of minutes. The girl behaved quite quietly, said nothing to her husband, just waited. She felt like a real bird in a golden cage. She had everything, but she didn't have that freedom and lightness she used to. It was just an ordinary day. Vanessa, as always, was taking care of Flora when suddenly Timothy walked into the house. He wasn't alone. He was with some woman. "Meet my daughter. You'll be working with her." Vanessa got up from the floor and stood in front of her daughter, shielding her a bit from the gaze of this woman. "Timothy, who is this woman? And what will she do with our child?" "That's none of your business. Pack your things and leave." "The child will stay with me." "Timothy, what are you saying? This is my child. Don't worry, everything will be fine." Vanessa couldn't believe her ears, but her husband decided to divorce her and keep Flora with him. Vanessa thought that her husband simply didn't understand how important a mother was to the child right now. They argued for a long time, and then her husband's security guards put Vanessa in a car and took her to another city. She resisted, but she couldn't cope with the man. The woman just couldn't find the strength in herself. She cried and dreamed that all this was just a dream. The woman returned to the capital several times and tried to see her child, but Timothy firmly stood his ground. He talked about how Flora would have another mother, and in general, now it was worth waiting for the court, which would clarify everything. Vanessa believed that the court would be on her side. And then there was indeed a trial where Vanessa learned a lot about herself. It turns out she drank heavily, didn't look after the child, and didn't think about anything. Timothy's lawyer did a good job and came up with such nonsense that Vanessa's ears curled up. She didn't quite understand how to live on now. The court established that upbringing and guardianship would remain with Timothy, and Vanessa would be able to see the child, but not very often. Of course, such a decision didn't suit her, and she promised to file an appeal. Vanessa didn't understand at all how she let such a person as Timothy into her life. Even her salon, where she worked so hard, was actually registered under his name. The woman decided to stay in the big city to see her daughter occasionally. She got a job and started saving money for a retrial. In due course, all the jewelry that Timothy had given her over the years went to the pawn shop. The retrial didn't bring the desired result. Timothy had a lot of money and he easily bribed everyone. The woman fought for her daughter and tried to arrange a meeting with her. 1 year passed, then another. She didn't think about anything anymore. 10 years passed. During this time, a lot has changed. Vanessa was forced to sign documents allowing her daughter to be taken abroad, and they went to live in another country with her father. Now she didn't see her daughter, and she just cried every evening. She couldn't do anything about it. And then one day the letter came from another country saying that her daughter was gone. She was skiing and, unable to cope, flew over the fence onto the rocks. For Vanessa, this was a huge blow. She no longer understood what to do. She didn't want to live, and she couldn't even go to her daughter's grave. She lived very poorly and only collected the necessary amount half a year later. Arriving there, she was stunned. There was a photo of Flora on the monument, so bright and smiling. She fell to the ground and burst into tears. Now Vanessa's life was completely over. She didn't even think about what would happen next. Thoughts increasingly crept into her head that she really didn't want to stay in this world anymore. She hated Timothy and wished him the worst. However, she never managed to meet him. By the time she came to the cemetery, the man was no longer in the country. He had moved again. Acquaintances said he was having a hard time coping with his daughter's departure. Of course, Vanessa didn't believe this. She blamed her ex-husband for everything, constantly saying that he was to blame for Flora's absence. And 3 years later, she was informed that Timothy was gone too. Allegedly, an incurable disease took him, and frankly, Vanessa rejoiced. She realized that justice exists. 6 months after this letter, she received another one, which said that he had left all his property to Vanessa. The woman didn't care about it at all. After all, now neither money nor anything else could make her happy. She lacked the main thing, her daughter. However, she still accepted the inheritance and even went to that mansion where she had once been happy. As it turned out, in the last days before Timothy's departure, he was here. The woman walked around the mansion and looked around carefully. She remembered being happy in this house once. Memories surfaced and troubled her soul. Entering the bedroom, Vanessa noticed a suitcase standing against the wall. Opening it, she was speechless. It was completely empty, and at the very bottom lay an envelope with "For Vanessa" written on it in big letters. She began to read it and even strained. There was shocking news. Recovering. A few minutes later, Vanessa continued to study the contents of the letter. Timothy wrote that he found out about the illness about 5 years ago. Then he decided to send Flora to live with his younger sister, who couldn't have children. He thought it would be the right decision, because he didn't want to give up on Vanessa. The man came up with a way to protect his sister, because after his departure, Vanessa might start looking for her again, and then the sister would suffer even more. And just before his death, he realized that he had done something terrible, and even began to think about telling Flora that her mother was waiting for her. But he didn't have time. Every day he felt worse and worse, and these thoughts faded into the background. The letter also contained the coordinates of his younger sister, where you could find her and Flora. Timothy admitted that he felt very guilty towards Vanessa and didn't even understand what had gotten into him. He just wanted to hurt Vanessa, and for that purpose he even shared that stupid but terrible news about Flora's departure. Vanessa reread this letter for several minutes and couldn't believe her eyes. Timothy never got married, but his nasty character didn't allow him to reconcile with Vanessa and tell the truth. 2 days later, Vanessa went to search for Timothy's sister. She really wanted to see her daughter. The woman was happy only with the thought that her daughter was alive and well. All the way, she remembered what she had to go through. It was a very difficult time that Vanessa would never forget. She found the house mentioned in the letter. When she rang the doorbell, an elderly woman opened it. Vanessa couldn't even recognize Timothy's sister in her, but it was her. "Where is she?" Vanessa asked without even greeting her. "So you finally came." "So Timothy did leave you the letter after all?" "He did." "Well, good for him. I always told him he was doing terrible things. And your daughter? She's at school right now. But come in, make yourself at home. She'll be here soon." "Thank you. I will never forget what you did for my daughter." "Don't mention it. She's my niece after all." A few hours later, Flora came home. Vanessa stood silently for a few minutes and looked at her, tears rolling down her eyes. She was so happy to see her child. And although the little girl who had been taken away from her was not standing before her now, but a grown woman, Vanessa understood that this was real happiness. She hugged Flora and cried even more. "Forgive me, I couldn't protect you from all of this. I'm sorry I believed your father." The girl didn't quite understand what Vanessa was talking about, but after Vanessa explained everything, Flora turned pale. She realized that her father simply didn't want to share her with anyone. He was a terrible honor. They returned home and settled in Timothy's mansion. Now everything was fine for them. Vanessa was ecstatic that this story ended so well. Now they live together with their daughter and try to make up for all that they missed. Sometimes Vanessa feels like everything that happened in her life was some kind of punishment. However, she didn't understand what for. When everything in her life started going well, Vanessa even began to think about getting married again. After all, she was only 45, and life begins at 45. By the way, not long ago, she accidentally met Jimmy, and they even exchanged phone numbers. No, Vanessa is unlikely to build a relationship with him, but she at least understood that she still has a chance to be happy, because if he noticed her, then other men will too. Not everything is lost, and life still has plenty of surprises in store.